So we're back, of course, we're talking FF7, we're talking Rebirth. We're back with a sort of follow-up to yesterday's video. It does sort of involve the Butterfinger Collab thing, but not about it directly. But the image they tweeted out yesterday just kind of happened to have the ESRB rating for Rebirth, which is obviously kind of big information, kind of big news. Something obviously didn't talk about with yesterday's video. I don't know how I missed it other than maybe being just kind of a little bit rusty, sort of, from not uploading for like 4 or 5 days or something. I don't know, but it's obviously we got to talk about it. Rating itself is not surprised. It's still T-rated, obviously. They're going to keep it T-rated as much as we want them to go to the M rating, like Final Fantasy 16, so they can tell a more mature story, because FF7 has a very mature story. They did really well with that back in the day. With the T rating was like just a little more mature back then in the 90s than what a T rating is these days, typically, right? So it's still T rating, not too big of a surprise. So right here we have it in the bottom right of that Butterfinger kind of collab image, which is just the cover art from Rebirth. But yeah, it's a T rating for violence, blood, mild suggestive themes, language, use of alcohol, and tobacco. And this isn't really a surprise, right? Like, we knew, based on, like, I think the first trailer was the Summer Game Fest trailer or something like that, where we got, they showed us blood. They showed, like, Sephiroth cutting Tifa and blood flying towards the screen. So, like, the use of blood's not really a surprise. The UP DLC had a T rating with a blood kind of warning, if you want to call it that, and there's obviously a little bit of blood with that, so that's not really a surprise. Some people were looking towards the use of alcohol and tobacco. For Sid is part of that, right? Because he smokes, and people were like excited about that. But it's not really a surprise either. We had like, I don't know if it was in the actual ESRB, but with like the little blurb they give you on the ESRB website for Remake, they talked about people smoking and stuff like that. And obviously, President Shinra smoked cigars in Remake, so it's not a surprise. I don't know why people like assumed or thought that like they would cut the smoking out of the story or the game. Kind of strange. Especially since we had smoking in Remake, right? With President Shinra, like, whatever game Sid was going to appear in, there was going to be smoking. They weren't just going to cut that out. So, we know that Sid's going to be in this game, so for sure, part of that warning or whatever is for Sid. The warning is, you know, alcohol and smoking. So, we know there's a bar in Junon. Something I've seen people point out on Reddit, I kind of forget about sometimes, is there's that bar in Upper Junon where, like, the Turks are that you can come across in the OG FF7. So, I'm assuming that's part of what's going to be. And I think Costa del Sol has a bar too, right? So, there's a couple different bars and things like that for the drinking part of the warning that we're going to see throughout the game of Rebirth. I thought this was interesting, though. We had to talk about this because it's like, it's kind of weird because you don't, if you just like Google search FF7 Rebirth ESRB, there's not an official ESRB thing on their website yet. So, I'm kind of curious how it's here and why it's here, because everything else has been saying like rating pending, right? People were hoping that rating pending meant it was going to be mature, which would never make sense. I mean, as much as we want it to be a mature game, they're not going to make the first game T and then just move on to M rating. Maybe for the third game, potentially. I don't know, but this game's been in the works for a long time, right? Rebirth. They were never just going to change the rating. I doubt it's going to happen for the third game, too, because a T rating means they can sell it to a wider audience. As successful as fucking M rated games are, and the game would sell just as much as it's going to sell as a T rating, if not more. They're almost like 100% going to keep the Remake project a T rating all throughout the trilogy, which is fine. Like, it's fun. It's great what it is so far, but there's always going to be that little bit of like edge missing, right? Because there's just certain stuff they couldn't depict. We couldn't have the bloody Genova trail in the Shinra, building. When they showed Genova, she had to be like, they couldn't show her like decapitated head or whatever it is. They had to have like some sort of like thing over her body, so they couldn't show like the titty eyeball. And like, I think whenever Cloud pierced through that crack in like the underground facility or whatever where they rescue Wedge, and you see like the people in like the tubes or whatever, like they couldn't show a lot of that, like the human experimentation, because of the T rating. So there's always going to be like this little bit that's missing from the Remake project because they can't depict things like they should or could in the original release of the game. It's one of my complaints I've had for the remake project in the past too. As great as it is, and I love it, I love talking about it, I'm excited to play Rebirth, I'm excited to get in the third game inevitably. It's just something that's always going to be missing, man. Just kind of want to get this video out there. I'm a little bit short on time. I'm excited to see what the actual ESRB rating is from like on the website itself. It'll probably match up to this for sure, but we always look at like I said, the blurb. They always put out like a paragraph kind of talking about why the game is rated what it is, and always gives us a little sneak peek into the game. We looked at it for Remake, we looked at it for 16, we looked at it for the Yuffie DLC. We're gonna look at it for Rebirth, of course, too. I'm kind of curious if that's gonna drop relatively soon, since we're seeing it up here on this like Butterfinger promotion thing. So dudes, that is going to be the video. Subscribe to the channel if you guys are new. Social networks in the description below. Follow me on Twitter, @DaveYT. That's it. Bye.
Used to care what people thought, but now I care more, and nobody out here's got it figured out. So therefore, I've lost all hope of a happy ending, depending on whether or not it's worth it. So insecure, no one's perfect. We spend it with no shame. We blow that like Coltrane.